Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going into some really unsettling territory. We're talking about true stories, chilling accounts, right from inside prison walls or, connected to them. These aren't campfire tales. They're first-hand narratives, experiences that show the deep psychological impact when you encounter, extreme human behavior. Stories that honestly defy easy explanation. They leave a mark. So this deep dive is really a journey into those unsettling realities, told by people who work there in corrections or got tangled up somehow with individuals linked to that world. We're going to hear things that really push the boundaries of what you thought you knew about true evil, maybe, and just unexpected terror. Okay, let's start with a story that genuinely, it sent shivers down my spine when I first read it. It comes from a female corrections officer. She was pretty new, fresh out of studying criminal justice, and she starts her career in one of the absolute oldest county jails in the country, a place she called the condos. Can you picture it? Long, linear corridors, like hotel floors almost, where every inmate could see you walking by. Every single one. But you couldn't possibly see into every single cell at the same time.
That layout itself creates immense psychological pressure.
Yeah.
Constant visibility, but not constant oversight.
Exactly. A recipe for unease. Right. So about a decade ago, maybe more, a really horrific crime happened nearby. A quadruple stabbing homicide. Just brutal. The murderer, a pre-trial detainee they called Michaels, gets brought to her facility. He apparently described his own crime as a butchering. Killed his former girlfriend, her family, even a neighbor, and when the police found him just soaked in blood and asked what happened, he just stated completely flat, "It's obvious I just killed everyone."
That utter lack of emotion, that's profoundly chilling.
It is. And the officer noted, that stabbings, they often indicate something else, maybe a more dangerous personality type compared to, say, shootings. And his complete lack of remorse, it was horrifying to her. So because he was so volatile, Michaels gets put in an observation cell right in the middle of these condos where an officer could always, theoretically, keep an eye on him. Most of the time, he'd just stand there silently at his glass door, just watching everyone. All day.
Hyper-vigilant observation. Almost predatory.
Yeah. The only time he really spoke was during visits. Apparently these big goth girls would come, claiming they were in love with him. Oh, and he had this other really unsettling habit. He drew pictures, specifically of fat female COs. Just bizarre and creepy. Right now, for her personal encounter, the really disturbing part, our officer, she was working as a utilities officer that day, kind of a floater role. She's down at one end of the condos, talking quietly to another officer, sharing a personal story, something about her fiance, and she mentions, there aren't really secrets in jail, sound travels, but they were being quiet, and they were a good 50 yards, maybe more, from Michael's cell. So she finishes her story, turns, and has to walk past Michael's cell to get where she's going. She never liked doing it, because he would just stand there and stare. But this day, as she takes just one step past his door, she hears this whisper, almost inaudible. Edecombe. Well, that was her last name. It was on her uniform name tag. But she didn't even think he knew her name. She'd never been his main officer, never really interacted.
He targeted her specifically then?
Yes.
Knew who she was?
Exactly. It caught her completely off guard. She stopped, took a step back towards the door, and he just points to his mouth. So she leaned in, closer to the glass. And what happened next? She described it as absolute terrifying. Said his eyes looked so dark she felt almost hypnotized. And then he started reciting, word for word, the entire personal story she had just told the other officer quietly. 50 yards away. He even mimicked this subtle lisp she had in her voice.
Incredible auditory recall. Or something else. Utterly unnerving.
She said it felt like it went on forever. The glass between them just vanished. And she was hit by this wave of just profound terror, thinking, this is evil, this is unfixable. His reaction when he finished, hysterical laughter, just laughing hysterically. And she said later, despite everything else, being assaulted, having things thrown at her, the constant mind games, this was the only time in her entire life she felt she was dealing with something not human.
It transcends typical criminal behavior. It's a calculated psychological assault.
Yeah. And Michaels? He's on death row now, different place, refusing to appeal. Not out of remorse, he says. He just doesn't care.
That kind of encounter, it really does shift your whole understanding. It's not just about bad people doing bad things.
Yep.
It's that calculated predation. Identifying a vulnerability, like a quiet conversation, and exploiting it instantly. Not for physical harm right then, but for absolute psychological dominance.
Yeah.
It shatters that officer's sense of security. You can see how it leads to trauma, even without direct violence. It points to this chilling level of awareness that's just deeply disturbing for anyone facing it.
And that feeling, that profound vulnerability, doesn't always come from something so calculatedly sinister.
Our next story, also from a female corrections officer, shows how fast things can go wrong, how a routine situation turns terrifying, even in what seems like a controlled space. This happened early in her career. Night shift, county jail pod, housing, I think, 72 inmates.
Yeah.
And she describes the setup, locked in, alone, with just a handheld radio. That's it.
The inherent risk in that scenario is immense, for sure. The pod was laid out like a, quote, college dorm. Central day room, 2 tiers of cells around it. And it was a direct inmate supervision setup, which sounds backwards, but it means the officer is locked in with the inmates. Theoretically, the inmates are supervising you, not the other way around. It feels strange. So around midnight, routine time. Lock everyone into their cells for the night. She's alone, doing her rounds, checking the cell doors are secure, enjoying the quiet, actually, which is rare. And then, bam, jump scare moment. She starts walking down the stairs from the second tier. Suddenly, she hears this loud boom, boom, boom on the main pod door, looks over. It's Officer Smith, another CO, outside the pod door, and he's pointing frantically towards the bottom of the stairs she's descending. Just as she looks, an inmate darts out from behind the stairs. Completely naked, well-muscled guy. He'd clearly been hiding there, waiting, presumably to ambush her as she came down those stairs.
A terrifyingly close call. Pure luck. Officer Smith was there.
Absolutely. The chilling part, the aftermath, the inmate just played it off, said it was a prank. And apparently nothing was done about it. No real consequences. She was left with this lasting fear, understandably, and that question just hanging there. What if Officer Smith hadn't come back right then?
Even if it was intended as a quote-unquote prank, which seems unlikely given the circumstances, the psychological impact is huge. It reinforces that constant threat level. In those direct supervision units, an officer's sense of safety is already fragile. Incidents like that, even without physical harm, can severely erode their trust and well-being. It's a constant pressure cooker.
And that pressure, that reach, it can definitely extend beyond the prison walls themselves. We've got a couple of unsettling pen pal stories next. They really show how inmates can try to cross boundaries. First one is brief but creepy. A woman in a mental illness recovery program, her friend's brother who was in prison somehow got fixated on her, started sending letters saying he was in love with her, wanted to be her son's new daddy, asking for photos, visits, all this despite her clearly rejecting him repeatedly.
That relentless pursuit, even from confinement, is a hallmark of obsessional behavior.
It really is a stark reminder of that persistence. Okay, the next story. This one is even more chilling because it's from the same officer who encountered Michaels. Remember her?
Yes, the one from the Congos.
Right. So sometime after that whole experience, she takes a job at a privatized prison. She was actually shocked when she found out where she'd ended up working. Didn't realize initially, and immediately saw red flags everywhere. Security seemed really lax. She estimated maybe a quarter of the inmates were regularly on drugs or alcohol inside. And then this horrifying incident happened. An inmate literally just walked out the front doors, left the prison, found his girlfriend, abducted her, raped her, beat her terribly.
Catastrophic security failure. Unbelievable.
And the staff reaction, according to her, zero remorse. Nobody was even fired, so that's the context. Extreme vulnerability, lack of accountability. She also mentions the staff bathroom setup was bizarre, located so she had to walk past all the inmates to get there. It made her so uncomfortable she just stopped eating or drinking during her shifts to avoid using it. So it's in this environment that her boss encourages her to become a pen pal with a specific inmate, a German-speaking one, because the boss knew she spoke German. She agreed, thinking, okay, maybe it'll just be something different, entertain herself. Then came the first. Moment. She leaves the staff bathroom one day, and the inmate is waiting for her right outside the door.
Crossing a clear boundary immediately.
Yeah.
Testing the waters.
Exactly. But the real terror started on her day off. She gets home, and there's a letter from him at her house. And it wasn't written in German. He'd somehow found out her home address. The letter said he believed he was a sexy black man, made disturbing requests for pictures of her, and asked her to sneak in his favorite kind of tobacco for hand-rolled cigarettes. She was horrified, freaked out. The next morning, she goes into work. Her office is apparently in chaos over some financial scandal, but her pen pal inmate sees his chance. Her boss and the other person in the office go up to the attic for something. He slips into her office, immediately shuts the door behind him, locks it, and asks her, all excited, "Did you get my letters?" He said she was shaking, terrified, but managed to find her voice. Demanded, "Yes, I got your letter. How did you get my home address? You were never to contact me there again. You were never to enter this office again. You were never so much as to look at me again."
Asserting control back.
Yeah.
A very brave response in that situation.
Incredibly brave. His reaction, it surprised her. He looked down at his hands, seemed almost embarrassed, gave what she felt was a sincere apology, unlocked the door, and left. But she was traumatized, quit right then, at lunch, walked out, didn't tell anyone why, but the story isn't over, not quite. Flash forward. Years later, she's living somewhere else, new place, with her boyfriend. He was out at band practice or something. She's home alone. Their intense LED motion sensor light outside goes off. Someone's at the door. Okay, maybe an animal. 5 minutes later, it goes off again. Now she's scared. Gets up, listens, and hears her doorknob turning. Someone's trying to get in. She texts her boyfriend, obviously panicked. He's not home yet. The person fiddles with the knob for maybe 2 minutes, then leaves. Boyfriend gets back. They check the Porsche. Everything looks normal. Nothing seems taken or disturbed. But later, she goes out to stub out her own cigarette, and she sees it. The butt of a hand-rolled cigarette on her porch. None of her friends smoked hand-rolled cigarettes. Only one person came to mind. She said a wave of nausea just washed over her. Her deepest fear confirmed. Somehow, after all those years, he'd found her again.
These pen pal situations, they really expose those patterns, don't they? Patterns of grooming behavior almost, and that extreme persistence, especially in that second story, from being pen pals to finding her home to contacting her at work, locking the door, and then years later appearing at her new home. It's relentless. It crosses from manipulation into something like obsessive stalking, maybe erotomania. It just shows how some individuals can latch onto any perceived connection, any weakness, and try to extend their influence, their control way beyond the prison walls, leaving victims with this lasting just erosion of their sense of safety, anywhere, anytime.
That idea of control, exerted even from behind bars, it connects to our next story. This one takes us back a bit, to the 1960s, a prison near Miami. A guard working there, this is the narrator's father's story, encountered an inmate he described as like a younger Hannibal Lecter.
That comparison alone sets a chilling tone.
Right. So the guy was always calm, but just radiated menace. And one day, this inmate managed something incredible and terrifying. Purely through motivation, just talking to people, he incited a full-blown riot on his cell block without lifting a finger himself. He didn't participate physically at all. Every other prisoner was going absolute wild, screaming, throwing themselves against the cell wall, shouting obscenities. Just pandemonium, chaos. But amidst all that chaos, the Lecter inmate, he was the only one who was quiet. He just stood at the back of his own cell, calmly, staring directly into the guard's eyes, with this strange little smile. And he was muttering something, over and over. A random sequence of numbers, the guard thought at first, until the horrifying realization hit him. The prisoner was reciting his home phone number.
Wow. That's pure psychological warfare. Breaching that boundary, the sanctity of home from inside prison, it's designed to terrify. It demonstrates a chilling level of control and access to information that shouldn't be possible. Makes you wonder immediately how. How did he get that number? That vulnerability is profound.
Exactly. It's the how that makes it just so much worse. That feeling of being exposed. Okay, for our final story tonight, we're heading over to Europe. This involves a group of teenagers exploring an abandoned prison. An abandoned one right next door to a still functioning prison. The initial idea was kind of urban exploration photography, thrill-seeking. They found a way in through a decayed section of wall, wanted photos for what they called AP2D art. So they get inside, and this place is huge, sprawling, decaying, described as a former labor factory prison, built for inmate work programs probably decades ago. And the rooms they found were just incredibly creepy. One room just full of old shoe soles, piles of them, hallways painted in really vivid, strange colors, rooms stacked high with old mattresses.
The atmosphere alone sounds deeply unsettling. A place soaked in history and decay.
Totally. A labyrinth of just weird discoveries.
Yeah.
So the fateful night comes. They decide to go back late at night. Their goal this time is to get up onto the roof for photos. They find this dark, zigzagging staircase, no railing. And disturbingly, at the end of each zigzag turn, there were these slits or holes in the walls, like narrow openings. Curiosity gets the better of one of them, the narrator. They crawl into one of these slits. It opens into a small box-like confinement. No windows, pitch black inside, except for their light and what they found inside. Just horrifying. Pornography plastered all over the walls, tissue scattered everywhere, injection needles, and a notebook filled with what looked like workers' logs, sign-in and sign-out timestamps. Like someone was using this space regularly. The most recent entry, just 2 fucking days ago.
So this abandoned space wasn't abandoned at all.
Not this part. They realized these numbered slits, they were crude cells, clearly still in active illicit use, right next to the real prison. They scrambled out of there fast, just wanted to get to the roof and maybe get out. But when they reached the roof, they stumbled onto something far, far more dangerous. 5 men, described as having pumped arms, sweatpants, bandanas, and Chillingly, swastikas tattooed on their arms. Neo-Nazis, presumably.
Walking from one danger right into another, much worse one.
Exactly. The men had black gym bags at their feet. The teenagers glanced down, saw inside illegal firearms and tons of rolled-up cash. They'd walked straight into the middle of an illicit arms deal. The tension just skyrocketed. The men started discussing what to do with them, mentioned someone named Gustav. Luckily, the narrator understood the language they were speaking, heard them debating the options, rough the kids up a bit, scare them off, or take them away somewhere.
An absolutely terrifying position to be in. Life or death hanging in the balance.
Desperate escape time. The narrator just screamed, "Follow me!" to their friend. And they started running, scrambling across the connected prison roofs, jumping from building to building in the dark. The narrator remembered thinking, "They won't shoot us, not near a real prison, it's too risky," hoping that was true. They finally managed to get down to ground level, kept running through the complex. Suddenly they hear shouting, dogs barking, from the real prison's security guards next door. They'd been spotted or heard. Quick thinking kicked in. The narrator yelled out in the local language, "There's men up there! They've got guns!" pointing back the way they came. It worked. The security guards diverted, running towards where the arms deal was happening. The teenagers didn't stop running until they were back in the city center, safe but shaken, never reported it to the police, never went back there again.
What a story. It really highlights that bizarre intersection of, urban decay, active criminal enterprise, and just pure chance. Finding those active cells, the needles, the logs, it suggests this hidden dark subculture operating literally in the shadows of the official system. And then stumbling onto the arms deal. The psychological impact of surviving something like that, it completely shatters your sense of reality, of safe spaces. Terror can just intrude anywhere, unexpectedly, even when you're just exploring.
Yeah. As we sort of come back from those accounts, you really see that common thread, don't you? This profound sense of vulnerability. Whether it's psychological manipulation, like with Michael's, or the physical threat in the pod, or stumbling into that arms deal, it's that chilling insight into truly disturbing minds and the unexpected ways horror can just crash into ordinary life. These aren't just stories you hear and forget. They leave these indelible marks on the people who live them. So what does that leave you, the listener, thinking about? What does it really mean to feel safe when these kinds of threats, these minds, can emerge from places you'd never expect and leave echoes, like that cigarette butt on the porch years later? It's definitely something to mull over. If these stories gripped you, if they made you think, maybe made you double check your locks. Would appreciate it if you'd like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Horror Docx. We do more chilling deep dives into the unknown, just like this one. Until next time, stay vigilant out there and stay curious.